Hi, everyone. It's Plastic EP coming in from Melbourne, Australia. Now, let me tell you, I'm speaking to one of the world's greatest collectors out there. He's got such a variety of a collection, right? Like, it's unbelievable. But apart from that, he's got some great books that have just come out. Just tell me about your books there, Tom Fontaine.
Well, hello. First of all, thank you for letting me be on. And yeah, my books. My first book is called Rare: The Memorabilia Collection of a Lifetime. And what it is exactly what it is. I started collecting when I was 5 years old back in 1963. Just turned 64 years old. And over the series of time, I collected about everything as far as like all different music, entertainment, sports, all those different things. So what I did do finally a few years ago, because I'd already previously had sold several pieces of my collection that are in major collectors' hands now and things, I decided to go ahead and do a book of what I currently had in my collection, with a kick of basically making sure I had stories with them as well too, because everything that I've ever purchased or ever bought, I always try to have some kind of a backstory. Sometimes it's hard to do with thousands of pieces in your collection, but I try to do the best I can. And so therefore, my first book, more or less, it just shows how I started collecting, what I currently have in my collection from all the different artists, from the Beatles, and of course who we're going to be talking about today, the Monkees, Elton John, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Kiss. There's just all sorts, and plus entertainment as well too. When it comes to like television, Star Trek, movies, Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz, artists and Marilyn Monroe, James Dean, all that is in this book. And one good thing is that people have complimented me because they just really enjoy going over it more than once. They feel like that there's something else that they want to see. And that's what I really did want in this book. I wanted people to really enjoy and also know that there were so many other artists out there that you might look on your turntable and know who they are. But I gave them a little bit of piece of that history from my collection to let them know a little bit more about these artists. And that's what I always wanted to do, was preserve that history. My second book is called The Beatles in the Solo Years, A Trip Down Memory Lane. What's so cool about that is a couple things. Number one, since I collected so many Beatles over the years, and I still have Beatles in my collection still today, I wanted to go ahead and I wanted to put a document of items that I used to own, because I've seen them on Google, I've seen them every which direction and everything like that. And I just thought, you know what? I own that. I own that. I did this, and all this. And I thought, this time I want to document it. And how it ended up happening was I went ahead and decided to do as a chronological, started when the Beatles first started, at the Cavern, and then also to how the Beatles have signed their autographs today. Well, of course, we lost John in 1980 and George, but it gives you, that's why I called it the solo years. In other words, like you have a great collage of wonderful signed material at different events, from the Hard Day's Night premiere to the Royal Command performance to the Variety Club Awards. And then you've got contracts, and then you go into the solo years, and it's like Walls and Bridges by John, George Harrison's signed material, and then also too some real special items. I was fortunate enough to own Meet the Beatles album that was signed on February 9th, 1964. And it was for like a stage person who was actually also doing the What's My Line stage at the same time. But and then also too, something we talked about was this photo I have that is signed the night that Elvis Presley and the Beatles were together in Los Angeles, or in California, Los Angeles, and it was inscribed to Elvis's cousin Billy Smith. What's really neat about this is that we have such a variety of material that is now also an educational book. a lot of people want to know about signatures. They want to make sure, so what I did was years ago, back in 2004, I did a Beatles autograph study. And the autograph study has done very, very well. People have looked at it and everything like that. Well, this enhances that, because what it shows items that basically have sold. Everybody knows what they are. Contracts, documents, you name it. But it is the perfect way for a collector to learn about the signatures of the Beatles, and so therefore when they walk into a gallery or a store or anything like that, they could carry the book with them and they could look and see, you could say to someone, just as an education, okay, can you give me a little bit of story behind what this item is and when was it signed? They may say, well, it was signed after they all broke up and everything like that. And they'll say, okay, fine. Not only do you have the Beatles from 61 to 1970, but you got 1970 to today. So therefore, you have a full gambit of what the Beatles autographs look like as an education. When I did the book, I did it more or less to say, okay, this is a document. But then more as I went through it, I told myself, I said, you know what, this is really, really going to be educational for the new collector, the existing collector, to really, really feel comfortable when they want to purchase some Beatles autographs. So that's why I did that, and that's how the book ended up happening, and which I'm really, really proud of both of them.
Tom, I got to say, they're worldwide big sellers. Now, just tell everybody the biggest links where they can buy the books. Is it Amazon?
Yes, it is. It is on Amazon, and so it's kind of like with Amazon, it's kind of like order as you go. So the one thing about it is that I originally, when I did the book, I had it as a 12 by 12 coffee table book for rare memorabilia collection of a lifetime. They have Amazon, unfortunately, they sell it to the smaller size of 8 by 8, and which is okay. I mean, but it doesn't give the impact that I really, really wanted it. But that's what Amazon, you have to kind of follow what their rules are. And then the Beatles book, they have now put that out on paperback. I think you can still order the hardback, but then they also on the paperback, but they are on it. They both are on Amazon.
Let's kick off the show now. Get into the Monkees. Now, I know you're a big fan of the Monkees. How did the Monkees come and influence your life? You're obviously a first-generation fan like myself.
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, as you well know, from I told you about the Beatles book, I was a Beatles fan. I've been a Beatles. That's what started off for me. Well, the thing is that once I had kind of got the buzz that there was this group that was going to become, that they were going to do a television show, and it was going to be about a group and everything like that, and I thought, okay, well, I want to tune into this, and even actually before the show came on, because I had already bought Beatle cards before, part of me told me, I bet you, I wonder if there's going to be Monkees cards too. And what they did release the black and white sepia ones in 1966, and of course that's around the time when the show came on. So I started kind of collecting and getting to know them, and then of course, to my wonderful surprise, what was really cool is that they the monkey romps. Because what it did was, I mean, everybody talks about what the Monkees may have started the music videos, but I will have to say, some of the romps reminded me of In Hard Day's Night, Can't Buy Me Love. They're running around in the field and jumping up and down and everything like that. And the other one that comes to my mind is in Help, is the very last sequence when they do Help and they're on the beach, and John's dancing with somebody and stuff like that. So when I first saw the Monkees and I saw it, what was kind of happening with it, and I started kind of collecting the cards, I thought this could be very, very cool. And so it was interesting because, I could buy 45s, but my very first two albums, Magic, is what I got was that I could afford to buy with all my allowances and everything like that, was the soundtrack to A Hard Day's Night and More of the Monkees. And those were my very first two albums. And of course, then I had a neighbor who lived across the street from me on my street on Sutton Street. And she invited me over because she said, I know you like the Monkees. And she showed me the first album. And when I saw the graphics of those first album, I said, oh my God, on the back of that, that's what we've seen on television, them kind of on their cycles with the little training wheels and everything like that. And I thought, I got to get this album. So that was the second. So More of the Monkees was the first, and then I bought the debut album second. But I love the music. Then, of course, at the time when the show was on, we were still as kids playing outside and everything like that. But my mother would call me. All of a sudden, I would be right in the middle of anything. She would open the door on the front porch and she'd say, Tommy, it's time for the Monkees. And that's how she would say it. And of course, obviously, I dropped everything I did, went right in there, and I watched the Monkees. But the funny thing of it was the fact is that was the exact same thing that happened with Batman. Because Batman was on 2 nights, and I know we're talking about the Monkees now, but it was on Wednesday and Thursday night. So on Wednesday and Thursday at 7:30, I beeline for my black and white television. We did not have a color television, so matter of fact, what we did was to try to see if we could get a color part. We bought these lenses that basically had like color little lenses, and we put them in front of our eyes to make it look like it's a different color from black and white. And it was all fun though. I mean, we had a good time with it, And but that was my introduction to the Monkees, and I've been a fan ever since. And I've had some great memories of all of them. And so there you go.
I'm glad you said that, because I just got to say this: here in Australia, in 1967, not 66. In July, the year that I turned 9 years old, Batman was on in July. Then 2 weeks later, the Monkees were on our black and white TV. And then I turned 9 years old, right? Unbelievable time. I will never forget it. And we didn't get colour TV until 1974. Now, I also want to tell you about the Monkees, the first album. My favourite album of all time is the Monkees' first album. And tomorrow's going to be another day. I played that song so many times that I just wore out the groove. I really did. That was my favourite song. Tomorrow's going to be another day, and I still think it's great today. And I've got to say, More of the Monkees. What happens is Don Kirshner got all the songs from the show, put out the album, didn't tell the Monkees. Monkees are touring. Someone goes to a record shop, comes out and goes, here's your new album. It's More of the Monkees. And the Monkees looking at, what's this trash? What's this rubbish? But you know what? It ended up being the #1 selling album of all time, the More of the Monkees. So Don Kirshner knew what he was doing, because when the Monkees were red, white, hot, he got the product out and he made the sales. And that's why that's the #1 album. So Don Kirshner, in real fact, sold the Monkees as the Monkees to the Teeny Boppers at the right time and cashed in. So that's what really happened there. Now, let's get into it now. I want to talk about all these signatures you got from Mike and Mickey from their high school days and that. Tell me how you came across all this.
Well, the one thing about it is, in my progression as a collector, I came from the cards and the magazines, and then I was very visual. I was very visual, and I always wanted whatever. When video came out back in the late 70s, early 80s, what I tried to do was I wanted to get all the 16 millimeter prints of all the shows. And I was able to contact a friend of mine who ended up getting these prints, and he went ahead and he put them on VHS for me. So I actually saw these 16 millimeter prints, which was really, really great, because the Monkees was not on. I mean, the only time Monkees was on, like after the big run, they were also on Saturday morning. And that's what was so cool on Saturday morning, was the fact is that they were also installing new music in some of the episodes, which was really, really, really cool, because you're going, okay, I'm ready for this song. And they're going, what the heck is that? You didn't know. So you thought, is this new music? What's going on? And no, so I started as far as the signatures and everything like that, I just progressed. I wanted to have a piece of history. I've always been an historical person. I've always wanted to preserve the history as much as I possibly could. So as a collector, I just went ahead and I just felt like I had a gift on what was pretty cool to have. And it works still to this day, because believe it or not, those items that we're talking about is items that I have probably picked up within the last 2 or 3 years. But one thing about it is like when you think about the early roots, you think about, like, we'll start with Mickey Dolenz. Obviously, he was Mickey Dolenz, but then of course he also was Circus Boy, and he changed his name to Mickey Braddock. Yeah. It was a stage name, and so the interesting thing was I was able to get this this yearbook from 1959. And the neat part about it is, if you open up the book, you see Mickey as a child in 1959, in school. But Mickey himself had this in his hands. He signs it at the top, and then he starts basically dating certain things that were happening. And he mentions Circus Boy, and he mentions the Monkees and everything like that. So you have not only the yearbook, but you have Mickey in his own writing, a chronological order of his life. And, which was very, very cool. And when I saw the opportunity to get it, I said, no, I've got to have this. This is so cool. And, the interesting thing was, and of course, obviously with Circus Boy, once I knew about Mickey as Circus Boy, I started collecting Circus Boy stuff. So I have puzzles. There was a couple puzzles. But my favorite piece it's the ice cream maker. I have a Circus Boy ice cream maker, and it's in the original box. And so therefore, and what's interesting about this story about Circus Boy, I got to share with you. The other thing I'd like to share, which is kind of somewhat related, is that Mickey appeared, and actually I believe this was his first convention at the Beverly Garland Hotel. And it was a Hollywood collector show. Well, I knew Mickey was going to be there. And so I flew out from Indianapolis to Los Angeles, and I had brought in about 10 or 11 things for Mickey to sign, because I thought this is an opportunity. Well, what happened was I also had the perfect condition of the Circus Boy game. And so I thought, Mickey, I said, maybe what we can do, I said, if you want to do this, maybe we can trade for doing some autographs or something like that. He goes, no, I already have the game. And I said, that's okay. So, but I'm still going to sign everything for you, which he did. But then when he got to the Circus Boy, he says, hey, do you want me to go ahead and put Mickey Braddock on there instead of Mickey Dolenz and put Circus Boy on the game? I said, oh my gosh, absolutely. That'd be fantastic. So anyway, that's my connection with the Circus Boy as Mickey Braddock. And of course, as a collector, I went ahead and found original album page. It's an autograph album page. And it says Mickey Braddock, Corky, which Corky was his name on the show, and has like a picture of him as a little boy up in the upper left-hand corner. And so that is a vintage Mickey Braddock, Mickey Dolenz autograph. So when I started collecting autographs, I started going in back to the roots. I located the yearbook of Mike Nesmith from Texas from the same year as Mickey, from 1959. And if you look into it, you'll see the front of it. Now, Mike later signed that yearbook too. He wrote Best Michael Nesmith on it. So you got these two yearbooks from the early days of the Monkees. And if you open up to the pages, you'll see a young Michael Nesmith right there. The only one that I have really, really still trying to work on is Peter Tork. But I'm not going to give up. There's going to be more things I'm going to try to find. As a crazy collector, at the age of 64, I'm still such a big Monkees fan on all aspects of it. And just to basically even own these items, I mean, it's not a boastful thing or arrogant or anything like that. It's just, I am so happy when it gets me in such a good mood to be able to find these wonderful things and know that I own them. They're not in any kind of bad lighting, so they're not going to fade away. And so therefore I can preserve the history that needs to be deserved about, Davy, Mickey, Mike, and Peter. In other words, I knew the Monkees and everything like that, but then I wanted to start going backwards. And I said, okay, what was going on with them? Okay, well then we go into Davy Jones, and Davy Jones, of course, became famous on February 9th, 1964, because he's in the same cast as the what's those guys, the Fab Four, doing their debut on the Ed Sullivan Show, and of course he was the Artful Dodger in Oliver with Georgia Brown, and he did Consider Yourself on that same show. So that was really, really cool. So what I did was, once I knew that was there, because I'd seen the show, but I didn't know who Davy Jones was at the time when I saw the show, because there was no Monkees then. So I kind of verted back and I started collecting the playbills from from Oliver. And then I found this great premiere program from Oliver that has a young David Jones signed in the program itself. And this is really cool to own that. And then I found out that after he did the Artful Dodger and Oliver, he went over to the West Coast and did a show called Pickwick. And when in Pickwick, I went ahead and I found programs from that. But then I found something very, very cool. It's a shot of Davy and the cast in the background at this hotel in San Francisco. And I didn't really know exactly where it was until I looked at the sign on the photo in the background and located the sign down and found out it was San Francisco. But it's one of the earliest photos of signed by Davy, because it was right after he did Pickwick. So what I've done with the Monkees is we know the established Monkees.
What I want to do now is talk about all these pages that you got from the Monkees television show. Tell me about those.
Well, it was very fortunate. I mean, the one thing that basically took off was basically the sounding board, the sound off for the Monkees TV show was a thing called The Last Train to Clarksville. And The Last Train to Clarksville is exactly kind of what it was. It wasn't in Clarksville, but it was in LA. And what they did was they got all the Monkees fans and they had invitations, and the invitations got them on the train. And then the four Monkees who flew in from a helicopter down to get into the train. So they traveled, and that was right around the time when the debut of the show was going to happen. And actually the Monkees performed in there as well too. And thank goodness for video. If you look real carefully, like on YouTube, you can actually find some really nice raw footage of that whole time, Last Train to Clarksville, in living color. Not the old black and white things and stuff like that, where I basically saw years ago. I saw this in color and I went, oh my God, I can't believe what we're seeing here. And anyway, so the paper that you're talking about is the original invitation of The Last Train to Clarksville. I think there may have been a flyer with that one, but this is the original one. And then also too, obviously there had to be a before the show started. Well, they had all these different writers, and one of the writers' name was Treva Silverman. And Treva, basically, this is her own personal copy, because on the reverse of what you might be seeing it has her name in pencil, not like a copy. It's in pencil. The neat part about it, though, is the original layout of the Monkees pad. And so this was interesting because this was April 1966. This is like few months even before the show even started, because obviously there was the pilot. It was in 1965, but evidently something must have said, okay, this is still a chance. And so therefore this was the layout of the Monkees pad. It also has the circle. It's circled on there, all the different writers' names and everything like that. But it's one of the earlier documents related to the Monkees before they even knew who they were. And so I've got that. And then also too, the very first Cold Gems press kit. And what's is really, really cool, because it's got like a folder type thing. And be honest with you, I think that's also what inspired the 1967 fan club kit, because it opens like a folder as well too, with the big Monkees logo. But this was the early stages of from Cold Gems. So it's got all the original press information that talks about what this group is, what the new album's going to be, what the songs are, and everything like that. And I thought this is just something for collectors to see, because this is the early, this is what started it. This is the roots. And so I'm so proud to be able to show it and have it. So obviously, and also preserve it. Okay, I'll tell you what, the other thing too is I'm so proud of is that I believe the size of it is 36 by 48. But what this is a true one-of-a-kind Monkees artifact. And what it was a poster that is signed by the cast, the crew, the directors, the producers, you name it, all the stagehands and everything, because what it was, this gentleman who they were signing it to was retiring. And matter of fact, if the Monkee collectors look, there's a group photo that shows a bunch of the cast and everything like that. That's when that picture was taken that day, because I've got the original, photograph with the stamp on the back of it, and you see it in Monkees fan club magazines and stuff like that. But that's who this poster was to. The other interesting thing is Mickey and Davey. Yeah, it was Mickey and Davey were basically at this time were in a limousine picking up somebody. In other words, like Mickey and Davey drove to pick someone up at the airport. So they had not signed the poster. But when I saw Mickey that day, when the Mickey Braddock story happened, well, I had him sign the poster. And then after that happened, Davey appeared at a concert here in Indiana. And I contacted a few people at the radio stations and said, look, Davey's going to be blown away to see this poster. And sure enough, he was. They took it backstage. They took pictures of him signing. He wrote, and the thing is what I requested, because in the 60s, Davey would write peace and love and do a flower. I asked him, would you put peace and love and do a flower? And God bless him, he did it. And so therefore, this poster is absolutely a true one of a kind. You will never see anything like it. And I am so proud that Monkees fans can see this probably for the very first time.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. Now, I just want to ask you about the photo at the Greek Theatre.
Oh my goodness, yes, absolutely. Well, Henry Diltz, who did incredible photography for the Monkees, and of course Crosby, Stills, and Nash and the Doors. He was very, very close to the Monkees, and he did a lot of photography and everything. Well, and I mean during the 60s, but then during the resurgence in 1986, Mike Nesmith showed up, and there was buzz going around. And I'll tell you what, Henry shot a picture of the four Monkees backstage when Mike joined him, and that was on September 7th, 1986, and 9/7/86. And what happened was the photograph, as far as I know, Henry only printed about probably a half a dozen to maybe 10, 16 by 20s. Well, a gentleman by the name of Rob Phil, who was one of the fan club presidents, got one of them, and he actually got it signed. Mickey signed it the night at the Detroit Auto Show in 1987. And so Mickey signed it that night. And then Rob was able to get Davey to sign it. And Davey, God bless him again, he's always good with dates and everything. He wrote the date of the night of that photograph, which was perfect. And then later on, what I did was I went to a show up in Detroit again, and I got Peter to sign the photo. And about 3 years ago, Mickey Dolenz and Mike Nesmith were in Nashville, and I got Mike to sign it. And it finished it all up. And Mike was blown away by it. He goes, what do we have here? And Mike was, I mean, he signed a lot of things, but he was really, you could tell he was pretty knocked out by what he saw. And I think, to my knowledge, I think that is the only one that is signed by the four, and Henry Diltz, the photographer.
Unbelievable. Now, what a great episode it is, Tom Fontaine. And let me tell you, we've just started off the series. This is episode 1. And we'll be seeing you soon, won't we, Tom?
Absolutely. I think this has been fantastic. Thank you for letting me share these incredible stories and memories with everybody. And I hope they've enjoyed it.
They're going to love it. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you.